Hey friends, welcome back to math today. We are going to shift gears and we're going to start to talk about fractions again for just a little bit. And we're going to talk today about equivalent fractions. In the next few lessons, we're going to do that. And you might be wondering, what is an equivalent fraction? And I bet in the word equivalent, you can hear the word equal. So these are fractions that are equal to one another. All right, so fractions that name the same part of a whole. Okay, and I've got a couple pictures here on this chart. This chart will also be on Google Classroom that you can access. All right, so if we had fraction bars, right, fraction strips, here's one whole piece. And you'll notice that these fraction bars are the exact same length. The top one is in 2 equal parts, right, which is why my denominator is 2. The bottom one is in 4 equal parts. So my denominator is 4 because there are 4 pieces that make up the whole, right? They're the same length, the same distance. Okay. I have one of the halves colored, but down here I have to color 2 of the fourths to make that same part of the whole. Okay, so we would say 1/2 equals 2/4. Here's 1/4 plus another 1/4 is 2/4. So these take up the same part of the whole. Okay, if I were going to stack these on top of each other, they would both take up the same amount of space. Okay, so here's a fraction strip or a fraction bar. Could do the same thing if we had it in a circle, right? I've got one circle and it's in 2 equal parts. This circle is in 4 equal parts. Okay, same thing. I can color 1/2 of it, but when I have these, because they're smaller pieces, I have to color more. So 1/2 is still equal to 2/4. 1/4 plus 1/4, right? Again, if I were to lay one of these on top of the other one, the green parts would be the exact same amount. So they take up the same part of the whole, whether it's a number line or a fraction bar or a circle or anything, right? If those fractions cover up and are the same amount, then we call those equivalent fractions. Okay. Now, in your book, there's a page that looks like this that I've already asked your parents over the weekend to help you make into fraction strips. Okay, so hopefully they were able to do that. I've got mine done. And one tip I want to give you is once you don't need them and you don't use them, just put them inside your book, almost like a bookmark. Don't let them hang out. And that way they'll stay nice and neat. They won't get ripped. You won't lose them. Okay. So I'm going to use my fraction strips today. If you have yours, awesome. If you don't, you can do that another time. Okay. You don't have time to do it now. And I'm not going to go through how to do that. Your parents can show you how to do that. All right. We're going to work on our math journal on page number 335. Okay, and remember, our vocabulary word is equivalent fractions. So we're talking about fractions that take up the same part of a whole. Okay, we're going to do a couple pages in this journal today, and we're going to work with equivalent fractions again the next time we have math. And we're going to do some homework so that you can show what you've learned. All right. Remember, we've got our vocabulary cards that are at the beginning of this unit. So if we flip it over, it says fractions that name the same amount. Okay, and they happen to use the same ones that I did. 1/2 and 2/4. These are equivalent fractions. So you'll find these vocabulary cards right at the beginning of this unit, Unit 5. Okay, so we're going to look at, these are nicely color-coded, so that it's nice and easy to see. And it says to have your halves, your fourths, and your eighths strips to do this page. Okay, so I'm going to look. Here are my halves. Right? One is in 2 equal parts. Here are my fourths. Okay, those are in 4 equal parts. I know it's a little bright, but you can tell that they are 4 equal parts. And then I've got my eighths. Okay, and those are in 8 equal parts. So 8 unit fractions. Remember, a unit fraction has a 1 on the top. Okay, you'll notice that I have darkened the lines so you can kind of see where I folded them to make them. Okay, so we're going to use these fraction strips to answer the questions on this page. Okay, so if you don't have yours, that's fine. but I want you to follow along with what I'm doing so that you can catch on to the concept so that when you are doing your homework tonight, you'll know what to do. All right? So I've got those strips like they told me, and it says, if you compare your halves strip and your fourths strip, okay, so here's my halves and my fourths. Right, there they are. It says you can see that 2/4 are the same as 1/2. Right? So it's talking about 2/4 here make up the same part of my whole as 1/2. Right? So we're going to fill in some of these blanks and some of these boxes to show that. Okay? How many fourths equal 1/2? We have 2 of them. So we're going to write 2/4. And then we're going to put that same number in the box to create our fraction. 2/4 equals or is the same as 1/2, right? Here's the proof. 2 of these, 1 of these. There's our proof. Okay, so 2 in each of those spots for number 1. Now for number 2, it says how many eighths are in 1/2. So I'm going to compare my halves to my eighths this time. Okay, see why it's helpful to have those right in front of you when you're doing your homework. How many eighths are in 1/2? So I'm going to look at 1/2 and I'm going to count how many eighths there are. There are 4 of them. Okay, so then I can complete my equations. 4/8 equals 1/2. There's our proof. And then when we write it like a fraction, right, we have a numerator and a denominator. This is our equation. This is our fraction equation. Okay, so we're comparing eighths and halves. And up here, we were comparing, right, fourths and halves. So we really got to pay attention to those directions and look at that math vocabulary so we know what they're asking us to do. Let's look at number 3. It says, what are 2 fractions that are equivalent to 1/2? Think about that. How would you answer that? What are 2 fractions that are equivalent to 1/2? We just figured that out, didn't we? We had 2/4 and 4/8, right? So we're going to write that on the line. 2/4 and 4/8. Okay, both of those are the same as 1/2. We can see it right here. Right? If we cover up the other side, there's our proof right there. Okay, now they're asking us to compare our fourths and our eighths. Here's our eighths and our fourths. Okay. How many eighths are in 1/4? So let's find 1/4. Right? I don't need any of this. I'm just going to fold that up. Okay. There's 1/4. How many of my eighths would take up the same amount? Remember, these are the same length, so you want to make sure you start at the same starting point. Okay? 1/4 is the same as 2/8. So I'm going to write 2 on the line and then complete my equations. Okay? So having these fraction strips is going to be an awesome resource for you to use on your homework, on your test. Okay? We also have access to the digital ones, and I have that in today's Google Classroom assignment. So if you want to use digital ones instead, you're welcome to do that. These are just nice and handy if you keep them in your math journal. Okay, so let's turn the page. We're on 335, right? So we should have all of that filled in. Now you know what, right, equivalent fractions are. Let's work on talking about thirds and sixths. So knowing that my denominator now is going to be a little bit different, right? Thirds and then sixths. You have to find it. Oh, I found the floor. Here we go. Okay, so here, again, they're the same length, right? But one of them is in 3 equal pieces. The other one is in 6 equal pieces, and I have them labeled with the unit fractions. Okay, so let's answer these questions too. Okay, it starts out by asking us, how many sixths are in 1/3? Okay, so if I have to take 1/3, that's 1/3, right? Another one would be 2/3, and then 3/3 would be a whole, right? So we're just looking at one unit fraction, 1/3. How many sixths would equal that amount on my fraction strip? It's hard when I turn the page because it's always got a little bit of a hill there. Okay, so compare those two. How many sixths equal 1/3? You can see right there, there's 2 of them. So 2 sixths equal 1/3, which is the same as writing it 2 sixths equals 1/3. Okay, now it's asking us how many sixths are in 2/3. Not just one of them now, but 2 of them. Okay, so if I kind of fold this one over, you can see there are my 2/3. It's kind of hard to see the separation there. How many of my sixths make up that same amount? You can see the end is right there. How many unit fractions do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 sixths equals 2/3. So I'm going to write the number 4, and then I'll complete my equations. 4 sixths equal 2/3. 4 sixths equal 2/3. Well, now we've got our friend Puzzled Penguin, right? He's always a little confused. Once in a while, he's on the right path, but we usually have to help him out. So here's what he says. Dear math students, that's you. Today my teacher asked me to name a fraction that is equivalent to 1/2. I wrote 2 sixths equals 1/2. Is my answer correct? If not, please correct my work and tell me what I did wrong. So let's get our halves and our sixths. I'm going to compare those. Okay, there are my fraction strips. You can grab yours. Now, is he correct? What do you notice just by looking at that on your own? Okay, first of all, let's just be kind. 2 sixths, and here's 1/2. Okay, so if I were to fold these over, this is going to show my 2 sixths, and here's my 1/2. Right? Those are not the same, right? But we don't want to be rude. We want to tell him kindly. We can just say, your answer is not correct. We're not going to say, you're wrong, right? That would hurt his feelings. I don't like people to tell me that. Right? So he just wasn't paying attention, right? What would equal 1/2? How many of those 6 would have equaled 1/2? Right? There's an extra one there. 1, 2, 3. So he just didn't count enough, right? So let's write that down for him. The correct answer is 3 sixths equals 1/2. Because, okay, can you catch up with me there? You could always pause, right, when we're writing. Okay, so the correct answer is 3 sixths equals 1/2, because both fractions Name the same part of the whole. Okay, and when I say the same part, I mean the same area, right? This part right here and this part right here. Okay, we're not talking about the whole fraction, the entire fraction, but just part of it. And they both take up the same amount. Okay, so that's kind of our introduction to what equivalent fractions are. Okay, remember when we were comparing fractions before, talking about fractions that had the same numerator or the same denominator, right? We have to make sure that we understand that the bottom, right, the denominator part, that tells us how many pieces our whole is divided into. And we want to be able to understand that that bigger denominator means smaller pieces, right? You can see that right here with the 1/2. That denominator is 2. Okay. This is a bigger denominator, but it's a much smaller piece. Okay, so if you haven't made your fraction strips yet, go ahead and do that. And then you can use those on your homework, and you can use those on quizzes and tests going forward as well. All right, have a great evening.